Here's what I say to my kids every night at the dinner table. We're all going to die. Like, there is no hope. You are going to die. Welcome back to Amy and I'm Amy Matthews, and we're in YA month. I am very fortunate to be here on Garner Land today in Tantania, Adelaide, down by Karawura Parry, and I am joined by Justina Ashman,
Hey.
Abby Guy,
Hi.
and we have a very special guest host and friend of the pod, Olivia De Zilva.
Hey.
And we're so excited because you may remember we had Olivia last year for Plastic Budgie when she released her book Plastic Budgie. And this year, this is our book of the month for April, Eggshell, which we're all in the middle of for next week's book club.
Mhm.
Um, and Olivia obviously has written about teenage characters from two different genres. Like you've kind of done it as a memoir and then as this YA novel, which we're all reading this month. So we thought who better to have on this week than Olivia to talk about YA. So welcome.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's so nice to be back. I loved doing the pod last time, so very nice.
It's I have to say it's the only podcast I've ever been on, and I've been on a few where I enjoy listening back to it because I can never remember what everyone said, and it always makes me laugh. I thought we'd just kick off with what some of our favorite YA books when we were growing up. And I have to confess, when I dug them out, they weren't all YA books. I just read them when I was that
Mm.
age.
This is the problem I was having. I was like, I have a few YA that I can show, but most of them weren't actually YA classified books.
Mm.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
feel like I was like a young adult at a really peak time for just like YA and teen fiction. Like I remember I was like hugely into like John Green, and that was a whole like quote unquote John Green effect. Like I don't know, I feel like throughout the 2000s YA really like exploded in a way, and I was
Mhm.
like reading quite a lot of it.
Hmm.
Yeah.
We had YA, but it looked probably different to you guys. Was really obsessed with they had these romances, which I don't have. They're all at my mother's house in a box, like in an attic somewhere. But they used to have these silhouette romances and Harlequin teen romances, and they were just the best. I want to dig them out because the covers were amazing. And I'm sure they were like, I feel like Jennifer, what's her name from Labyrinth? The actress Jennifer Connelly and also Phoebe Cates and a bunch of 80s actors were models on the covers of them back before they were famous. So I really need to dig those out. But yeah, I feel like we had them, but not in the same way you guys had them. I feel like by the time we hit this century, YA was kind of respectable. Do you know, like adults read it, and it
Yeah.
wasn't like
Yeah.
these books, like they no adults were reading these. These were specifically for like that's teen or yeah, it was like a teen section of the library. You'd have like your middle grade and then teen, and it wasn't so crossovery.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely feel like the YA genre became a bit more respectable and became a bit more literary fiction in
Yeah.
yeah, especially in the 2000s, and especially considering the film adaptations as well.
I think
Yeah.
it took off as like a huge commercial genre of fiction that
Yeah.
helped it get more attention because,
Do you
yeah,
think that was a demographic? Because I was thinking about crossover fiction, but actually there was probably a demographic boom for your generation because millennials and are bigger than Gen X, like much
I,
bigger.
I do definitely feel like, at least in my experience in bookstores with YA, I noticed a shift of like it being like one shelf in the
Mhm.
like back corner to like whole like quite large YA sections that you have now. And I remember throughout my teen years noticing that difference as well. So there was definitely like some kind of boom happening.
Yeah, yeah, and I feel like people were so interested in those stories in a
Mm.
commercial sense. I'm thinking about like all the teen dramas that came around that time, like Skins and The
Mm.
OC and Gossip Girl. Like
Yeah.
those books transcended that kind of YA label, but they were obviously like, well, Skins isn't a book, but like
Yeah.
Gossip Girl was a book series and
Yeah.
like just transcended that label, and it started this, yeah, popular media thing as well.
Yeah, 100%. Like, yeah, you have the TV adaptations, I
Mhm.
think were already happening before you started getting those big film franchise
Yeah,
adaptations.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
actually, saying that, one of my favorite books as a teen was Meg Cabot's Princess Diaries books,
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
which again
Yep.
I did read. I think I read them because of the movie.
Yeah.
And I really loved like the voice of them, even though I genuinely don't think I ever understood what algebra class was. Like, I was like, it was such a running thing that she struggled in algebra. And I'm like, I'm in high school. I should know what this means. And I just don't. And I was like, I remember studying algebra getting to a point in school where we were studying algebra. And I was like, ah, yes, the thing that Mia Thermopolis struggles with. And I was like, this can't be the same algebra because this isn't that hard.
Oh, hush up. I could never do algebra.
Yeah.
I'm
Also,
totally the princess here.
I was also just found it weird and I was like, oh, this is just because American high schools are so different. And I was reading American teen novels where like they have separate classes for separate types of maths, whereas in an Australian high school, it's all the same thing. Yeah.
That's actually a really good point to think about was the kind of dominance of American culture,
Yeah.
like British and American, but then I think even in my youth it was more American. And how you knew all these terms that just were irrelevant to your life, like homeroom and first period and
Sophomore.
yeah,
Yeah,
sophomore and
sophomore,
Yeah,
junior.
freshman. Yeah.
Yeah. I was reading a lot of Wattpad in my teens, and the Wattpad I was reading was like high school romance kind of Wattpads. And yeah, it was all like, wow, I want to live the high school dream. I want to go to a
yeah,
football.
yeah.
I hate football and sport,
Mm.
but
But that football would be different.
yeah.
Oh, I was reading the like high school, like American high school novels where it's like all the like weirdo theater kids, and it's like,
Yeah.
oh, I want to go to like an IHOP or whatever.
Yeah, or when they go to summer camp, you know, there are these books about summer camp. It's
Yeah.
like, oh, this sounds cool.
But
It's
I did
funny.
also read a lot of Australian stuff as well.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, I feel like my childhood was so rooted in Australian
Mm.
literature. Like, I wouldn't say, yeah, the American and British stuff took off as much for me. And so, like, the first thing I remember was the Saddle Club, which I very much
Uh,
enjoyed.
yep.
I
Yeah,
love the Saddle Club.
I know the books were amazing, and then I always wanted to be Carol from the Saddle Club, and then it kind of translated to hating Alice and Ashley. That was like one of the
Oh,
first.
I
I love that
loved
book.
that book. And
Yeah,
did you guys see when I was, because that came out when I was like in
yeah,
high school, and they used to do these theatre productions of it that would come around to
yeah.
schools. Did you get that?
I didn't get a theatre production of it, but I think my school, we studied it in English the year the movie came out, starring Pippa
Uh,
Woodrum.
Yeah, I love
uh,
the movie so much, by the way. It's
It
a
was so fun. I really
untapped
enjoyed
it.
it.
Yeah.
because they aged them up a bit for the movie, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
that was more middle grade, right? When it,
Actually, I don't remember if it was the year the movie came out or if I watched the movie after reading it for school. But yeah,
yeah.
no, I do remember loving the movie and loving the book. Yeah.
Yeah, we used to get, I think twice that happened where like a theatre troupe would come to the school and do it in the gym, and it was so good. I
Yeah.
loved it.
No, I think I actually read quite a lot of Australian authored
Yeah.
YA novels. I remember I was a huge fan of Melina Marchetta, and like everyone
Yeah.
knows Looking for Ella Brandy, of course,
Yeah.
but I read basically anything she published when I was a teenager. I was like, yes, 100% I'll read that.
When I was in year six, a girl in my class, her dad produced the Australian film of Playing Betty Bow. So we all got to go see it, and then we all read the book, and I was obsessed with it. How great. If for those of you watching on YouTube, there's this cover, which you probably can't see very well, but is like this peak 80s cover, but it's so good. It's like, has anyone read Ruth Park's Playing Betty Bow?
No,
It's
I've never
like,
even heard of
oh
that.
my God. Okay, so she's a literary kind of author. So when was it first published? 1980? No, first published 1968. So this reprint is 1980. But it's about this girl, Abigail, who lives in Sydney, and she's not getting along with her mother. And she goes back in time to colonial Sydney. She's in like, it's
Okay.
really good. And there's like a love
Actually, this
story in
is
the
ringing a lot
past.
of bells at the moment.
Yeah,
Maybe
it's
I have
really
read this
good.
book.
And it's got this incredible kind of I don't know, it kind of brings colonial Sydney to life in a way that I never thought was as romantic as other things. It's a really good book.
Like the cover alone makes me just want to watch the movie.
The movie is so good. I think you can find it online. And it is so peak 80s. There's even like coke ads and dancing to the TV and all the 80s tropes.
I wonder how much that like sorry, this is just making me think again of YA in and like being like that age and reading and like the way that I'm sure you all had very similar experiences where you'll just read like everything and anything.
Yeah.
Like you're still at a phase where you're developing your taste, but
Mhm.
that means you're like actually super open to reading all kinds of things. And then there's almost a benefit to the fact that YA is its own section in like the library or in a bookstore because it has so many different types of books all condensed into the one spot. And I remember reading quite indiscriminately through everything, even though I was very gravitated towards fantasy. I was like really into fantasy.
There was
Uh,
so much YA
yeah,
fantasy,
but
always.
I read like everything, and I'm like, oh, I feel like I'm almost less adventurous in my reading now than I was as a teenager because I
Yeah.
would just pick up, I would just borrow huge stacks of books from the library
Yeah,
and
I
like churn
think
through them.
that's one of the issues I had when we were getting ready for this episode and getting like my physical copies to show on camera
Mhm.
is I don't actually own a lot of the books I was
Yeah.
reading at the time because I borrowed so much from the
Mm.
school library and then my local library as well. I actually went back to the library. I've been going there recently to write that I grew up at when I was in like high school or primary school as well. And in my head, this library had like the most towering shelves, like the really
Yeah.
nice tall shelves that you
Yeah.
have in bookstores. And I walked into this library and I can see over everything, like over everything in the library. And I was like, this is not what I remember.
I used to
Like,
love, do
why
you
did you
remember?
lower the shelves?
Remember,
Yeah.
are you guys, oh, I don't know if this makes me really old, but when they have the wire racks that spun around and were just crammed with books, I
Yeah.
loved those. I could
Yeah.
just stand there for
I
hours.
like want one of those for my house.
Yeah. I'm sure
Um,
they sell them
Facebook
retro.
Marketplace it.
yeah, I feel like I have such nostalgic feelings for the library because yeah, probably like as like a nerdy, lonely kid, it was the best place you could go because the librarians would be really nice to you and they'd be your friends. But
Mm.
I think my yeah, like Justine, as you were saying, like my kind of yeah, appetite for reading began there because also I don't know if you guys did it, but I did the Premier's reading challenge.
Yes, yeah,
Yeah,
And
yeah.
same.
I always wanted to like fill the list and get the medal, so that that got me into reading a lot actually.
Yeah, I remember that as well. I found that. Yeah, I love those reading challenges as a kid.
Yeah.
Did you guys have book? We didn't do book week when I was a kid, but my kids did it and like the dress ups and the
Yeah.
parades and all that stuff. So, what was one of the best costumes you ever did for book week?
I did Elvis.
Oh,
But I don't
awesome.
know why. I think it's because I had a karate uniform. That's the only reason.
So
I would say this is one thing. Well, I mean, I remember, I know, um, in the 2000s and 2010s, there was a huge push towards more diversity in YA. But I remember going dressed up as a character from a book we'd read in class, which was like it was the first time I'd read a character like an Asian character, but she was Chinese character. And I'm like, I was so excited to have an Asian character to dress up as, but I was like, now, looking back on it now, I was like, oh, this was such an awkward costume to do as a not a Chinese person.
Yeah, that's
But yeah,
proper. That's all I know.
like cultural
Yeah.
appropriation as a 9-year-old or whatever.
What about you, Abby?
I only remember really doing book week once. And the one time I got to do it, I went as a ranger from Ranger's Apprentice, which was a
Aha.
series I loved at the time. But purely so I could walk around in a giant cloak. I didn't like wear the full gear, I just wore the
Just the
cloak
cloak.
with the
Oh my
huge
God.
hood. And I was like, as a fantasy kid, I was like, this is my dream. I am a
Oh, yeah,
ranger.
incredible.
I remember when I was a kid, they had this series called The Worst Witch. Have
I
you heard
love that
of
show
I
that?
so
love
Yeah,
those
much.
yeah,
books.
yeah.
Oh my
Those
God.
books were so good.
Love
Yeah.
those books.
Yeah. So when
Classic.
when the Rowling came out, I was like, hold on, this is just like The Worst Witch.
Oh
But
yeah, I was so obnoxious about it. I was like, actually, I
they
think
were
you'll
so
find.
good. I loved her struggles and just
Yeah.
yeah, they were great books. I really enjoyed those.
That one was
Yeah.
adapted to a kids' TV show as well, which I
Yes.
enjoyed.
Yeah, 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 yeah. It used
ABC.
to be on the
Yeah.
ABC. I remember that
Yeah.
one.
I
Mm.
remember like I was obsessed with Mildred Hubble, and then I was like to my mum, "Can you please buy me the Worst Witch book series?" And she bought me this like knockoff
Oh.
picture book, and I was like, "Oh, come on, man! Like I have a thirst for this." But yeah,
Mm.
I remember just like loving that so much, but more the TV adaptation.
Yeah.
It was more whimsical than Harry Potter though, for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah, yeah.
Mm, mm,
Yeah,
mm. A lot
Um,
like sillier in a
yeah,
fun way. I also
totally.
remember getting really into this like teen girl super spy book. I think it was called like Max Remy, something like that. Anyway, it was
oh,
very like Kim Possible vibes, like just teen spies. I was
yeah, yeah.
Mm,
yeah, I guess
yeah.
YA thrillers and espionage.
So
Uh,
I was going to ask you guys about fantasy, about because I feel like when I was that age, I read so much fantasy. So that series I was talking about that I got out, I was like, oh, I reread these to death. Like they're falling apart. It's by Louise Cooper. It was
Mm.
called The Initiate, The Outcast, and The Master. And I used to just read them over and over and over and over. But I went back to them and reread them in COVID, and I was like, why was I reading that? These are definitely not kids' books, and they're so problematic. There's like a rape scene but actually it's with the love interest and they end up together. I'm like, how did I ever think that was a YA series? But in my head, it was the YA series.
Yeah, I felt the same with Tom Brown's School Days. I'm not.
Oh, yes. I remember that. There was a TV series of that when
Yes,
I was a kid.
yes, with Stephen
Yeah.
Fry. I don't know if that was the same one, but there was the one with Stephen Fry, which I really liked as a kid. And I was like, oh my God, this is like so cool. This is about a guy at school, but then you like zoom in. And I had to ask my mum so many questions. Like, I think there was an abortion in one
Yeah,
episode.
yeah.
I was like,
And
oh,
there was
what's that?
abuse. There was
Yeah,
so
there was
much
a big,
abuse, like physical and
yeah,
sexual abuse of the boys.
yeah. I don't know why we were reading that stuff. It was crazy.
But then I guess the question there is like, there's such a kind of feeling when you're a kid that if you're reading about someone your age, then it's appropriate to you.
Yeah.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, not even that. Just like I was thinking the other day about because there's the new Wuthering Heights adaptation,
Yeah.
which I haven't seen yet. But I remember I read Wuthering Heights when I was really young, probably like 12. I don't know. I was at the age where like people would just buy me books as presents because they knew I liked to read, but they would always completely misjudge what kind of book to get me. And it was either like, a chapter book for like, very young kids that I was like, this is beneath me, or it was, yeah, classic literature, which I had no very like, oh yeah, didn't struggle to comprehend. But I remember just completely tearing through Wuthering Heights as a 12-year-old and like reading the whole thing in like a day or two. And I remember getting to the end being like, I think all these horrible people deserve each other. And I was like, no, I hate this
Apt,
book. But
apt.
I was
But
like
that's actually a
thinking,
good reading.
Yeah.
yeah. But I remember thinking back, I was like, no, I hated that book because all the people were mean. And I was like, yeah, but I read it so quickly. And it's like, definitely, I wasn't reading other classic literature. Like, I definitely wasn't like I think I tried to read Pride and Prejudice because I liked the 2005 movie so much and I just couldn't get into it as a younger person. But then I was like, yeah, I wonder it's like what is it about like certain books that are not necessarily for teenagers that you
Mm.
just get like I don't know, they just are very compelling to you at that age. Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think there's something about outsiderness. Like when I
Yes.
think about the books I loved, they were always people who were exiled from their society in some way.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally felt that. Like, I remember being 10 years old and reading Catcher in the Rye.
Oh, I loved that book.
Yeah, I would say it's my favorite book still to this day.
Yeah.
I was in love with it as a child because, yeah, being so isolated, obviously. And then, yeah, seeing that struggle, like, kind of portrayed in a way that I hadn't seen before. That kind of outsiderness, the loneliness, the rebellion, like, you would
And
see.
really quirky observation of people,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
you didn't often see
No.
represented.
No, I remember just like juxtaposing it against another book I was reading, which I think it was about a horse pony club or something, about an outsider there. And it's just like Salinger's observations just like hit harder because I
Yeah,
think he just
yeah.
grew past the shallowness of it all.
Yeah, I love when he talks about, the guy in his boarding school who can
Yeah.
whistle, that he's a
Yeah.
horrible guy, but his redeeming feature is he whistles well, and so he's not
Yeah.
all bad.
Yeah. I just loved it. I think that's where my kind of sardonic voice began because I'm so inspired by that book. And every time I
Yeah.
write a new book, that is like the basis for it, I think.
Can I confess something? When I was
Yeah.
in Year 12 drama, you have to do a monologue.
Yes.
I adapted Catcher in the Rye and did a monologue of it. I borrowed my brother's like boys' school uniform. Like
Which bit did you do the monologue of?
I know I wrote it I like patched together bits of
Oh,
it and
oh,
kind
that's
of it
so
was
funny.
like a 20-minute or half-hour piece. So yeah, I could
Gosh,
patch
that's
it together because
incredible.
I
it's
feel like
basically
when we inevitably do a Patreon, we need
Yeah.
Amy to do the
I
monologue.
I need a reprise. Like
and
Yeah,
then because it's basically direct address, like he's talking to the reader, so it's easy to do as a monologue.
Mm.
yeah, yeah, and I think that's what I liked about Holden is that he was directly talking to you, and that's what, yeah, kind of set him apart from all the other characters I was seeing at that time.
Because I also loved around that time The Outsiders, which I brought out.
Mm.
I
Mm.
loved
I
that. Do you
remember
know?
reading that one as a teen as well. I loved that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I still love it. I went back and reread that during COVID years too, and it still holds up. Like it's so
Yeah.
well written. I can't believe she was like 16, 17 when she wrote it.
Mm.
It's crazy.
I
Like,
know. I know.
Some people are too talented.
I know.
yeah.
It makes me sad.
Still, if you had to pick, I had a horoscope once that said my successful years would be between the ages of 50 and 80. And I was like, that's all right. I don't mind that. It'd be
Yeah,
better
yeah,
than peaking at 17 and it's all downhill from there.
yeah.
True.
I don't know. I like really wanted to be successful in my 20s, which I still am in. So like
Well, yeah,
hopefully
I think you're doing pretty well with a couple of books,
Yeah.
my friend, and some awards,
Yeah.
and you're doing okay.
I mean, not on the stellar long list this year, but all good.
Oh, what are they
We bu-
thinking?
we build resilience.
At least there's no age cutoff for that one, so you'll
I
get
know.
that eventually.
Every year, yeah.
Olivia
Um,
De Silva, the first person to be in the stellar long list 5 years in a row. That'll be you one day.
This is all just
hopefully.
a ploy to get you to just keep releasing books so you
Yeah,
can
that's
keep having books to submit.
right.
I know that's what my publisher said. They're like, we'll just do it every year. It's
Yeah,
okay.
go for it.
Um,
On the topic of books that like have harder kind of themes, I went through a World War II phase when I was
mm,
like a young adult. And so I was reading like so many, like The Book Thief, I think we read in class
Oh,
set me
yeah,
off. And then
yeah.
I was just reading as many books as I could get my hands on that were set during World War II.
yeah, I
Mm.
did that
Yeah,
too. I went through
same.
that phase. They had this book called I Am David that was in. Do you remember you used to get the catalogue that
Yes.
would come to your class and you could, and I'd just be like tick, 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 and my mother'd be like, no, you can't have all of them. But that was one I got from that catalogue, I remember. I Am David,
Mm.
that I would have been about 12.
Mm.
And yeah, just World War II and Holocaust history was
Mm.
obsessed with.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
one of my perennial book recs was a World War II YA novel that I like fell in love with
I
called
think you've
Codename Mary.
recommended, yeah, I was going
Yeah,
to say, I
I've
think you've
recommended it on
recommended
the
it on the
pod
pod.
before.
What? Which one?
Um,
Which one is it?
it's Codename Verity by Elizabeth Wine.
Okay,
Hmm.
I'll read it.
And it's about two girls during World War II. One is a pilot and one is a spy.
Okay.
Very fun. Oh
Oh.
well, very fun. It's devastating.
Yeah, on that, like I remember re obviously we watched and read the Diary of Anne Frank,
Mm.
but we read the abridged version. That was something I was
Ah,
gonna bring up with you all because I feel like we read the abridged version of many things, like Mao's Last Dancer, there was a kids version, and Chinese Cinderella. And I found that really interesting.
yeah, my kid read in
Yeah.
high school an abridged version of Malala's memoir too, which I
Yeah.
thought was really bizarre.
Yeah. Can we discuss that? Because I feel like
Yeah.
why are they doing this when we can just, I feel like as kids, especially, yeah,
Yeah.
some of those books as outsiders, we can really relate to that. So why the need to make, something like Mao's Last Dancer for kids?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. Like, there's some kind of idea of harm, right? Like that a
Yeah.
book could cause harm.
Yeah, I don't remember have any specific memories of abridged versions of books that I encountered in school or in high school. But I definitely know it's a thing that
Mm.
happens. And I wonder is it are they abridging it to take out subject matter that they think is difficult or that they think they would have to then get parental permission to teach or include? Or is it just to make it shorter and easier? Like,
Yeah.
is it trying to, are they trying to judge like the skill level of reading for the students, or is it that protect that what's the word? Like almost paternalistic,
Yeah.
like
Yeah, yeah,
That's what
yeah.
I think.
content. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I've been thinking about this a lot lately because obviously I teach and I don't know, I don't feel like simplifying things is good for anyone at
No.
all. And yet it's been the move of education for the last 20 years is to kind of meet people where they're at. And I don't think it works. I think it works much more to challenge people because they might not get all the way there, but they'll get further than they would have otherwise.
Mm.
Yeah. And I
My
think,
high school library had like a forbidden section almost. Like it
yeah,
had
Then
same.
that's where you were then, right?
it
You
had
had to borrow
Yeah,
all of them.
the senior
yeah,
fiction section that you could only access if you were in year 11 and 12.
yes, we had
And
that.
then I remember from year 7 onwards, basically every year I just had to get my parents to sign a permission slip to say that I was allowed to read books from the senior fiction section. So I felt very like special because of that.
She's
But I
Justina's
don't
very
think
mature. She can handle it.
yeah, I don't necessarily think that I ever encountered anything that I remember finding it crazy because I would find books in there that I read in primary school that were in my primary school library that are
Mm.
like senior fiction as because I was at I don't know. I was like,
Did
that's so interesting.
did
Why
your
is it?
did your families have many books in the house? Like were you
Oh yeah,
bookish houses?
my parents are huge readers. Yeah.
Yeah,
My parents were readers, but didn't have a lot like of books in the home. I was the avid reader.
Hmm.
yeah, yeah. We didn't. We had like Formula One autobiographies, and that's it.
That's
And they
incredible.
weren't read; they were like display pieces.
Though-
And yeah, I like everything I had was in the library, so I
Yeah,
never got to keep a lot of books as well.
yeah, yeah. Because my mother's a massive reader and just hoards books. Like every room in the house is full of them. So I think I just cruised and read everything I shouldn't be reading. Like you just there's no kind of oversight of a book if you're
Yeah.
in another room picking it up. And I think that you're right, like libraries function like that because you
Mhm.
don't even have to borrow them, right? Like you can go in the adult section and just stand there and read it or sit down there and read it and no one knows what you're reading.
Mm.
Yeah, I found it weird though, and yeah, to your point, Justina, like how some YA was categorized because at our library, we had the Twilight series, obviously, like everyone did, and only Twilight and New Moon were allowed in junior, and then Eclipse and Breaking Dawn had to be senior. It was so
Wow.
weird. So I had to like beg to read Eclipse, and obviously, yeah, it wasn't that explicit. So I just I
Yeah.
wonder how they come up with these categorizations for young readers. Like, what do they consider them? Yeah, like stupid? Because I feel like that. Yeah,
Mm.
that's the perception I got sometimes.
Yeah, I wonder as well because like I agree. I don't think there's anything I don't know. With the Twilight having half of it in one section and half in the other is such a strange choice to me. I'm like, wow.
The thing
Yeah.
I find weird about our culture is that
Mm.
you'll do that with a book, but
Mm.
then just standing at the bus stop, a bus will come up with like a naked woman on it in a really misogynistic pose selling a beer or something. And it's like, that's fine for us. Why is
Mm.
that fine and the book is not fine?
Hmm.
Mm.
I was also like, I remember I was a teenager during the period where everyone was releasing quote unquote issues books, which is what they called them, kind of patronizingly, which was
Mm.
yeah, YA books that are focusing on things like addiction, poverty, racism, like domestic violence, or just like various different like social issues. Um, and there was this kind of, yeah, dismissive way that people talk about issues books. But at the same time, I'm like, well, these are all things that like teenagers do experience. It's very like naive, I think, to try to
Mhm.
act like you need to shield teenagers and children from reading anything about any of these topics when their topics are just their lives also. Like,
I was going to ask this question later, but you're segueing perfectly into
oh
it
yeah.
because it was getting to your book, actually, Olivia, which we won't discuss in detail because book club next
Okay.
week. But I wanted to ask you about the idea of like darkness, right? Like, because as Justina said,
Mhm.
there's this kind of carefulness around kids and issues, and yet kids live real lives, right? And your book, this isn't giving anything away because it's pretty early on. Your book, we see a character who, has a complex family life, doesn't know her parents, is dealing with a grandmother who's got a fatal illness, like is like out of place at school, is dealing with racism. Like they're quite dark issues up front. So I could kind of tell reading it the way you dealt with it because you mentioned the sardonic voice and everything. There's no kind of cutesy kid gloves to it. It's just like this is stuff people are dealing with. We're just going to talk about it. So I was wondering how much you thought about that idea of grappling with the voice and darkness in the audience.
Yeah, I think as I was saying before, as a kid, I was reading, you know, books side by side, so with the same issues. Obviously, I was reading The Catcher in the Rye, and then a Pony Club book that dealt with the same issues kind of.
Mm.
And I just found reading that Pony Club book was like, I can't remember the name, but it was like very inauthentic to me. And as a kid, I was looking for that belonging when I couldn't find it. So I really found that, yeah, space in a book like The Catcher in the Rye. So I felt like I really wanted to write the authentic experience from there. Like you're right, like kids see bad shit all the time. Like they're on TikTok, you see bad shit at school, on the bus. So why hide from that? And I've never been one to hide from anything. So I felt like I just wanted to make it as real as possible because these are real things that we go through, and there's no point, abridging it for the sake of whatever,
Yeah.
yeah, reason.
Because
Like there's no reason.
kids do have ill family
Yeah,
members and are dealing with domestic violence in the
yeah,
home and drug
yeah,
use, and
yeah,
your character has a job, like,
yeah,
and is exposed to like certain treatment on the
yeah,
job, which a lot of
yeah,
kids are like.
yeah. Yeah. And that all like happened to me like as a kid. So there's nothing, why would I want to provide an inauthentic experience? Like it's just that's personally what I find that off-putting when that's in YA books. And I felt like I just wanted to be true to the teenage experience because sometimes it can often be like so misguided or so patronizing when, yeah, presented in popular literature.
And I
Guys,
do think teen
sorry.
readers can tell when they're being
Yeah.
talked down to.
Yeah.
Do you think, what I was going to ask too is, do you think when you kind of sanitize it or
Mhm.
Disneyfy it, that you're actually othering the kids again? Like that
Yeah.
you're an outsider then even in the fictional world. Like you
Yeah.
don't even fit in here.
Yeah, you're not making a space where they can like develop or understand or grow. You're like sheltering your reader again and isolating them from like the real life issues that they will be facing in the real world.
Because I also thought the setting was so interesting. Like you don't see
Mhm.
Adelaide very often anyway. We talked about that last year, but
Yeah.
to have like Lonsdale and to have, their experiences on the bus and the way you describe a kind of, you know, not an affluent suburb, like a suburb where they're going to run into things where this is their life. The idea of exposing class in Adelaide, all of that also was something I'd not really ever seen before.
Yeah, because yeah, me too. So I feel every kind of book I've read has had a sanitized version of like some class issues and representations of class. And obviously, yeah, there's not that many set in Adelaide. And so I was like really interested in exploring that because most of the YA books I've read have been in like kind of well-to-do suburbs. So for example, Looking for Ella Brandy, like in Glebe, like that's a well-to-do suburb. And so I really appreciated that book's exploration of class, but I felt like it didn't delve into the real nitty-gritty, if that makes
Yeah,
sense.
yeah.
So
Mm.
that's why I really wanted to represent that authentically and show that, yeah, there are like young people in these novels living outside those kind of expected margins.
And
I
the school scenes too, so good. That's how chaotic and animalistic school felt.
Yeah.
I have never read, this is going to expose me. I don't read a lot of Australian fiction, which is I need to read more.
Cancel Abby.
I know, cancel me. I definitely didn't when I was younger. As I said, I read a lot of American fiction. And so picking this up as someone who grew up in the South and went to a
Mm.
school south of Adelaide, to see Lonsdale, which is so close to home, I was like, oh my God. And it felt like me as a teenager reading it. And yeah, it was very, very authentic.
Yeah, I think that's just, I wanted to write a story that I needed. I think we talked about this last time as well, but I wanted to write a story that I think I needed when I was a teen that didn't kind of patronize or other me. So I felt like that was the best way doing that. And obviously, growing up there and spending time there and having that real life experience like kind of translated well for
Mm.
that.
I think you're so right as well in saying that if you're, if the reader is someone who's experiencing these things in their own life and then
Mm,
encounter it in fiction only to see it being sanitized
mhm,
or handled with kid gloves or just feel
mm,
really inauthentic, like of course it's going to feel alienating. They're going to feel
yeah,
like they're the only one who's ever had their experience. So they're even
Mm.
experiencing their own traumas wrong.
Yeah,
yeah,
that's
which is
right.
A
yeah,
sort of hyper self-consciousness that you have as a teen. And it's
yeah,
like, yeah, you're not serving anyone by hiding away from what life is like.
exactly.
And you're really
Mm.
just making the adults feel better. Not the
Yeah,
I
kids.
know. Sometimes that's what reading YA feels like at times. My partner always is like, "Oh yeah, it's to make the adults who were kids at that time feel better now." And
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, I didn't want to do that. I really wanted to write something that was, yeah, that I really needed. I know I'm an adult now, but yeah, it just felt right to make it as, I don't know, as gritty as possible in that sense.
So I know it hasn't been out that long, but have
Mm.
you had any responses from readers, like young readers yet?
Not really, to be honest, because with the fallout of not Constellations of Adelaide Writers Week, and I was meant to have a library day and stuff. So we haven't really had a lot of commentary from younger readers. Certainly have from old people. So yeah, they're like, oh my God, I love it. But no, yeah, not younger readers. So I'd be really interested to know what they think because obviously it's set in the 2000s, so it's different, but I was hoping they would see some of, the behavior or even the vibes. They could feel that it was authentic.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
hoping that, I mean, yeah, I don't know any teenagers personally, so I have no way of
Yeah.
testing this. But I'm hoping that even that 2000s nostalgia that there is at the moment would at least draw them in. And then there's
Yeah.
something about the experience of being a teenager that kind of transcends, decades and generations a little.
We talk when we talk about romance, we've been talking the last couple of years about how there's often a flattening of thinking because there was a traditional kind of definition that it presented an idealized world, but
Mhm.
actually then there's all these dark romances now that are not doing that. They're doing something else. And I was thinking about how we flatten kids' books and YA books too, as
Mhm.
though they should all be performing the same function.
Mhm.
But of
Mhm.
course, there will be idealized ones, right? Like the Pony Club, where you're escaping into a world.
Yeah.
And then you've got books like yours where it's like, here's what your world looks like and here's how you navigate difficulty, right?
Yeah.
In the real world, not into some fantasy world.
Yeah.
And yeah,
Yeah.
I was thinking about that, how we like to flatten kids' worlds into something a bit quirky and safe.
Yeah. And I think that's why I got like kind of pissed off at the abridged versions of things I was reading,
Mm,
especially like Chinese Cinderella, because yeah, and obviously that book has some stereotypes in itself. I'm not sure if you guys have read it, but
no.
yeah, I just don't understand why it had to end neatly in the kids' version, but then
Oh,
in the
okay. Tell
adult
us about
version,
Yeah,
that
well,
because that's
I'm pretty sure
interesting.
I read it in school, but I also have no idea what version I
Because
read.
that's weird. That's like
yeah,
giving Anne Frank a happy ending. That's strange.
yeah. I think it was like a bit more, positive at the end, but whereas like in the adult version, which I read recently, it was a lot more bleak and cynical.
Can I tell you when I was because I was again quite old when The Little Mermaid came out. And
Yeah.
I was babysitting my cousins, so I took them to see The Little Mermaid. When I was a kid, I loved the story, which
Mm,
if those of you watching and listening, if you don't know it, it has a tragic ending, right? She doesn't get the prince to love
yeah.
her. He marries someone else. She forfeits the thing with the hag and she disappears. She dies basically.
Yeah.
And it was, I loved that as a kid, the tragedy of it. I used to cry and I just thought it was the greatest story ever. And there was even a television adaptation where you saw her disappear into the ocean
Yes.
at the end. I
Yeah.
loved it. And
Yeah.
then I went to see the Disney one and I was like, oh, this sucks. What's with this? And I'm a romance fan, but I was like, this is not how it ends. Where's my big emotional tragic ending?
Oh, he's also a terrible romance lead, so you don't even want them together at the end.
He's a bit nothing. He's
Yeah, he's
terribly
boring.
nothing.
I think there's something there that I feel like sometimes people underestimate or forget how much that like children's and teens really resonate with like darker
Oh,
things
Yeah.
the
and
Definitely.
just
angst.
like
Yes. The
angst, yeah,
angst.
because it's a very intense
Yearning.
emotional experience. I
Yeah.
think stories that reflect that intensity of the emotion is something really compelling to like, yeah, to teenagers that people are like, oh no, but that's too dark. I was like,
And
that's not,
Twilight, people are not resonating with the happy ending. They're resonating with all the suffering and we can't be together and we're not the same and all that
yeah.
stuff.
Yeah, that's why they call it like an emo period. Like
Yeah.
teens,
So true.
yeah, like my whole teen period was like downloading emo songs off LimeWire and just
Yeah,
like
yeah,
looking out the window at the bus, you know, like that's what teens want to be represented as.
yeah.
They don't want that, yeah, happy ending. We're full of hormones and emotions, and so you want to feel that. And that's, I guess, why we watch movies to cry and things like that. So,
It feels like
yeah,
adults grow up and then forget what it
yeah,
was like at all to be a
yeah.
teenager, and they just assume this is what like teenagers want.
I think there's this like urge to protect your children from feeling what
Mm.
you felt. I think there's this incredible, particularly the last couple of generations, helicopter parenting of, I want you to have this perfect life where you never feel anything bad,
I
which
did
is
have,
so weird, but
There's
Yeah.
kind of a rhetoric around millennial parents. There's this rhetoric around millennial parents where they're like, we're doing it better. Like, look at us, we're
Yeah.
doing it well.
you'll just
We're
Bluey.
fuck
happy.
it
Our
up
children are
different.
happy.
It'll
It's
just
like,
be
Yeah.
fucked differently, that's all.
I know, literally. I know. Yeah, it's just like, I'm not charmed by Bluey because I just want to be sad because that's how like that's you know what I mean? Sometimes you just want to feel that stuff because you sometimes you feel alone in feeling that, but when you read, you
And
know,
that's when you go to BoJack Horseman.
yeah, that's right. Or Daria, you know.
yeah. I had an experience last year while I was reading ooh, it was a Jared Thomas book. I think it was called My Spare Heart,
Yeah, yep.
where I realized I was reading it from an adult perspective rather than from a perspective of like thinking about it through a teenage perspective because I remember just feeling like worry for the teen protagonist and just feeling a protective feeling over the teen protagonist. And I was like, oh, it's different. The way I read YA has changed fundamentally because I'm older now and I see a teenager as a child rather than like the version of me in the book. Yeah.
Has
That's
that happened to Olivia and Abby yet? Have you reached the point where you no longer identify? You feel like parental towards them?
um, not yet. I feel like I pick up a YA book and I'm like, I'm a teenager again.
Yeah.
I am a child.
No, so like I have the blur filter on my camera because
Yeah, I did too. It doesn't
my
help.
room.
I can see it though, just if you hold it down the bottom
Yeah,
there,
there,
I
you can
can
see
see
it there.
that.
Yeah, so obviously, I think we talked about this last time too. I'm sorry I'm a conversation repeater, but I really love the Jacqueline Wilson books when I was a kid, and they were like so messed up. I don't know what she was going on about, but there was so many crazy things happening in those books. There was like student-teacher relationships, there
Oh
was
wow.
addiction, and this one, Lola Rose, we read in year 6, and it was about domestic violence. And so, yeah, I think reading it as a kid, I really kind of, yeah, sympathized and saw myself in the main character, Janie. But then, yeah, now as an adult, I'm like, oh no, why are you doing this? Please stop doing this. Oh, yeah, you know, so I think that's happened to me a little bit, but I can still see parts of myself in these characters. Like, especially for Josie and Ella Brandy, like, I can still definitely see that and don't feel that parental thing there.
I think it depends on the book. I think
Yeah,
if I
yeah,
reread a book that I read as a teen, I still
yeah.
see from like yeah, I'm still thinking of it from the teen perspective because I'm remembering when I read it as a teen. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's something about going back to the old reads
Mm,
as opposed
mm.
to reading new ones. There's some, I don't know what it is. There's like it doesn't matter how bad it is too. Like I've gone back and reread books that I was obsessed with that when I read as a crafts person now I'm like, oh, that's terrible. That's just like I can't even. Um, but actually you're just there's so much of yourself in the book
Yeah,
that
yeah.
it's kind of like you have a love letter to yourself at the same time and you feel this enormous compassion and love for who you were back then.
Yeah, yeah, it's like that nostalgia and like really fitting back into those old shoes again.
Mm,
Yeah,
mm.
that's why I like it's embarrassing, but I always reread the Jacqueline Wilsons and always on planes because I don't, it's comforting.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I can think of several series that I've reread like almost every second year or so.
One
Yeah.
of the few that I have within reaching distance at the moment was one of my favorite series was the
Oh, Tamora
More
Pierce.
Pierce books.
I
And
just
I
read the first one of that
reread.
the other, like the last month
Oh, yeah.
because you always talk about loving them. And so I was like, I'll read one then. And I read the first one. I thought it was great. I just
Okay,
thought it
that's
still
good.
stood up.
I had a friend who I introduced to them when she was like yeah, in our 20s, and she just, yeah, she didn't like them nearly as much as I do and had all these criticisms. And I was like, I
It's like,
actually am
shh.
not in a place where I can hear criticisms about
Yeah,
me.
Yeah, yeah.
clearly.
And if they're
Yeah.
valid, like I am so emotionally attached, yeah, as you say, not just to the books, but to like the child version of me who was reading them in the library, like hidden amongst the stacks. Like I,
Oh, that feeling of the library, like I can still conjure up that feeling of when you're a kid and stepping in there and just like this sense of possibility, like you might go anywhere or find anything. They are kind of magic. It is a magic feeling.
And then when you reserve a book and then it finally comes, it's the best feeling.
I remember being feeling so special when the librarian asked me for recommendations if there were any books that I wanted the library to get for the collection. I was like, oh my gosh, the power.
Can I tell you, when I became a published author, probably a couple of books in, I got an email from the old my old local librarian who remembered me and was just like, "Oh, I knew you'd end up doing something with books because you were like here all the time." This is like it's so nice
That's
that
so
you're like
lovely.
remembered.
Oh.
Yeah.
It's because I lived at the library.
Yeah. Yeah, it was just like endless possibility. And I felt like, yeah, it was the one place where you could go and just feel like the most yourself, especially as a kid, and just like let your imagination not be constrained by what other people think, which I found so nice and liberating.
Do you know what I am thinking? I'm thinking of the Matilda movie, the
Yeah.
Danny DeVito one,
Yeah.
where you have baby Matilda walking to the library on her own, and then like how she finds the like sanctuary just going to the public library. I was like, yeah, hard relate to any teen
Yeah.
character or child character who was like, I love books and going to the library. I was like, it's me. I also love books and going to the library.
Yeah, but then like there's also books like Specky McGee, and it's like, oh, well, I love sports too, and I love reading and sports. Like that's why I love Specky McGee. That was like that is what got me into it all, I think. Really.
Mm. So do you still read YA? Like, do you still buy and read YA? Do you go into the bookstore or the library and head for the YA section?
I
Um,
do. Yeah. I feel like YA fantasy
Mm,
Yeah, yeah,
sometimes is really good. And so I'm often there. And also YA fantasy romance I quite like
yeah,
because, which is known to the pod, I have issues with adult YA romance. Like not
yeah.
YA, that's a contradiction.
I know what you
Adult
mean.
fantasy
I know.
romance. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I feel like going back to YA, it's just, I don't know, they do the yearning and the like the gentle
I
mm,
romance
do love
nicer.
a high school romance for the sweetness of it and the
yeah,
first timeness of it and the lack of disgusting baggage and all that stuff. It's
yeah,
really nice.
No,
Yeah.
I do still read YA as well. And middle grade. The yeah, it tends to be fantasy, but not only fantasy. I think I really like the paciness of a lot of YA and also the really strong character voice that you get in a lot
mm,
of YA.
Yeah.
That me, yeah.
We were buying for my nieces recently and we were in Dymocks and Rundle Mall and I'm just like, wow, YA has changed. Like you've got a YA romance section, a YA fantasy
mm,
section, a YA section, a YA horror section. Like the YA section is enormous. It's so
mm.
big.
Yeah, I know, and the covers have changed so much. My publisher and I worked in bookstores for a bit last year, different ones, but we noticed how much the covers had changed from like this, like you can't really see it, but it's like people and stuff, and now it's
Yeah.
like that really like illustrated style. And so
Yeah.
that kind of put me off because they're not the books of like
Yeah,
they're the
yeah,
books
yeah.
that I love like a cover with a stock photo model or like, just like random people on the cover. So I think from that I've kind of felt like isolated from the genre now because it's just like not the same. And I think for me, I'm so cynical and beaten from like the world and all that. I just like can't read stuff like that anymore. Like everything I have, as you said, Amy, it comes with baggage, and that's just yeah, something that I now relate to, and that's the only thing I can relate to.
Yeah, you definitely, I think, change so
Yeah,
that, yeah, I think I would struggle with simplicity now too.
yeah, yeah.
Um, but I don't know. I mean, I still do love a fantasy, a YA fantasy, or there's really plotty, I find. They're
Mm,
really pacey and plotty, and they lack I mean, some of the adult stuff, like you said, Abby, is just too dark. Like when you want to have an escapist bit of fun. I want an adventure story that's not too dark.
Yeah. Yeah. Without so many awful men is my issue.
Yeah, that's true, actually.
No?
Just like the world.
I know it's you can't let your cynicism like ruin everything, but I have. It's very sad.
I think maybe that's it. Because I mean, we were talking
Yeah,
before about like darkness not necessarily
yeah,
being like off limits in YA, but I think that's it, Olivia. It's the cynicism that you get with more age and experience.
yeah,
Even when books are dark, and even if characters are kind of a bit, yeah, sardonic or something, but
yeah,
there's kind of an existential cynicism that
mhm.
isn't necessarily as present.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's so true. And I think trying to tap back into like when you were a bit more innocent is really hard, and it just makes me cringe a little bit for myself. I'm not speaking for everyone else, but yeah, I just
I
can't feel that.
I feel the difference most starkly in dystopias actually,
Mhm.
because I remember when YA dystopias were taking off, and I loved them.
Mhm.
And then also reading adult dystopias, but then like yeah, when you talk about like I guess the affect of reading different genres, it's so different for an adult dystopia.
Mhm.
Like I would feel so hopeless after reading adult dystopias, which is not the feeling that YA dystopias are trying to impart.
Yeah.
Yeah, my friend Rach, has written a series that's YA dystopian fantasy, and she was talking about this about the burden of hope, like that
Yeah.
she finds that you can't really write for younger people and not offer up hope and optimism because what are you doing? Like, what is that project if you're
Mm.
just writing despair?
Yeah.
They should have to learn that through life, just like everyone else.
I know. Like, oh,
I feel like that's a
yeah.
problem though, right? Like with current teenagers being on the internet and
Mm.
having so much access to like the world news, are they hopeful for their future? So then if you're reading a dystopian that's not hopeful,
Do you want my hot take on this? Because
yes,
I
please.
drive them nuts because I think I'm like a bleak person with a lot of joy. Because I think here's what I say to my kids every night at the dinner table. We're all going to die. Like there is no hope. You are going to die. But along the way, there'll be some great fun. Do you know,
Yeah.
like it all ends in the same spot, but you'll
Yeah.
fall in love. There'll be great sex. There'll be food. There'll be travel. You just got to take the joys.
Yeah, yeah, that's so true. That's what I was trying to do with Eggshell. Like everything there is objectively, I can't speak today. I'm so sorry. Everything there is objectively fucked. Like everything's going wrong for her. But then you just see these like little pockets of like, oh my God, this guy likes the same music as me, or I had a laugh with my friend, or
Oh, and
laugh.
just the
Yeah,
fact that she is who she is. Like you just
yeah.
like I don't know about you guys, but I kind of like love like I enjoy her so much. I'm like if I can find such pleasure in you, one day you will grow up and realize you're fucking amazing.
Yeah, that's so funny though, because when I was writing it, it was part of a master's project, and my supervisor's like, this character's way too unlikable.
Oh, I love her. But
I know.
I feel like I'm like that because I feel like people say
Yeah,
that about some of my characters. They're like, oh,
yeah.
she's just a bit miserable. It's like, that's me. Stop it.
I
I was
That's
so
what my brain
offended,
is
Olivia,
like.
know.
hearing that. I was like, ah, how dare you
I
say that?
know. Yeah, I was so interested in exploring that joy where when everything was failing, like giving the reader glimpses. I mean, it's not a ha it doesn't have to be a happy ending, but you have to have those pockets of joy, I think.
Hmm.
Yeah, because that's life. Life is all
Yeah,
of it at once. Like it's never,
yeah,
you never reach like this point where everything's great. It's just like always all the mess all at once.
yeah, yeah. And I
Yeah.
was like never afraid to get messy, I think, with that one.
Yeah. Well, I'm enjoying it. So if everyone, you better go read. We're nearly out of time.
Are we? Oh my God.
Nearly. I've got one more question because we did
Yeah.
start a bit late, so I can, but I just want to take that moment while we talk about Eggshell to remind listeners and viewers to run out and get your copy because we will be in 2 weeks' time. We've got book club,
Ooh.
so you've got 2 weeks to read it, people. The last question I wanted to harken back to something when we're talking about dressing up. There's been a thing. There's a few authors that I just loved. Like I was too old for that one, but there were other authors from my childhood that were some of my favorite authors that I just like would reread and reread and reread. And since then, have learned that they are were kind of hateful and like violated my ethics and my values, and they were not. And I find there's such a kind of tricky act. Like, how then do you go back to the books, right? Because everything's compromised. Like, I love Anne of Green Gables, but it's also a colonial book, right? So,
Mm.
but I still love it and I reread it.
Mm.
She was not that horrible, so I can read those. But there are other ones where I wanted to ask you, how do you navigate having a story that became such a part of you when the author kind of betrays you? Like, do you navigate it? Can you go back to it? Is it stained? How do you feel about that?
For me, I remember, I mean, this isn't YA so much as kids. Like, I was a huge Roald Dahl kid, and like, he's like a racist, anti-Semitic, all sorts of things. Um, which finding that out as an adult, I was like shocked. And also, it felt so incongruous with the kinds of like messages of his kids' books that I was like, how does your brain like align these things? Um, I think with some authors it's easier to ignore, like especially like the dead ones.
Yeah,
Whereas
yeah.
one of the spy books, spy series that I liked reading, like the author made like racist and like classist comments, and I was like, well, I mean, I'm not throwing out the books, but I
Mm.
also just have like no interest in like going back to them. Whereas I will keep going back to my Tamora Pierce books.
Yeah, because there's like three
Yeah.
authors I can think of off the top of my head who are activists for things that
Yeah.
violate my ethics. So then it's like, oh, that's wrecked for me now. Like
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
actually can't now.
Um, yeah, it's so weird because it's so tied up in nostalgia, right? And you don't want to like leave some of those memories behind. I won't go back and reread the Harry Potter books, but Joanne doesn't exist to me anymore. Like
Yeah,
it's just like it's an omnipotent narrator. And I think that movies are a little bit different, and
yeah.
I feel like I don't want to forget that those kind of parts of my childhood. Like Harry Potter was a huge part of my
Because
childhood.
it becomes your
Yeah,
fantasy world. Like
it was.
everyone adopts it and
Yeah,
you imagine it. Like a
yeah,
book is like the author can write the thing, but actually it's
yeah,
the reader who has to co-imagine it.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And I feel like in some ways, like that, those books and those movies like help me, like, grow up and stuff. So,
And they were so magical. They were.
yeah, it
Yeah.
was like my own fairy tale. Like, people have fairy tales growing up, and that was mine. So, I don't want to forget that part of my life, but I also don't think like Joanne like exists in my life. Like, but I
Yeah.
never had a connection to the author of that book. Like, I
Yeah,
was,
see, I don't think
yeah,
I've ever done
yeah,
that so much either.
yeah,
It's like it's more I don't want to fund horror in the world.
yeah.
Yeah, so Abby and Justina, do you feel like the authors were alive or dead to you when you read books?
I've never felt like I don't think about the author at all. It's
Mm.
only now when I am trying to write myself that I am thinking about the author, or that I have started to collect several of said authors' like books. But I wasn't into the Harry Potter book. I didn't read them at all when I was a child,
There's
which
even
I can say
dragons.
now with like,
There's
haha.
dragons, Abby. How did this
For like
happen?
2 seconds
They
in
don't
like the third
speak.
book or
They
something.
don't speak.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, but no, I never read them. I don't actually, none of the authors I was reading growing up are quote unquote cancelled. So, but there are authors I think about now that I read so much, like Maggie Stavata when I was younger, that if something were to come out, I would struggle a lot, I think, to let that author go.
Same. I love her books so much. And I read them as an adult, not as a teen for the first.
Yeah.
Mm.
I yeah, I mean I'm the same with the like Harry Potter books. They were hugely formative for me as a child and teenager. And yeah, I don't even yeah, I don't feel I remember feeling like grief about sort of that ending, but also
Yeah.
I haven't felt the desire to go back to them, but I'm also like I don't want to like be like judgmental or whatever of the earlier version of myself who that meant a lot
Yeah.
to. Like I'm not rewriting like the reality and saying that those books didn't mean anything to me. It's just that I no longer want to engage with them.
I think, who
Yeah.
used the word grief? Did someone use the word grief? Was
Just
it you?
I think I did just
Yeah.
then.
The I think that's my predominant feeling when I go to those texts. So I see them on my shelf is just sadness. Like,
Yeah.
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 Yeah. Yeah.
I've
And
read it.
yeah.
You go,
No,
Olivia.
no, I just felt like when people came over and stuff, I had to hide them because I felt like really shame, like for having them out and stuff. And I just
Mm.
don't know how to wrestle with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And maybe there's no wrestling with it. It
Yeah.
just is like
I
it's
do
Yeah.
think
messy.
as well, just in terms of being aware of the author in general. Like I had authors whose I would read all of their books because I liked one of them, and I was like, well, I'll probably like more. But I didn't know anything at all about the author or their life or anything they'd ever said. I wasn't looking up author interviews. But I think over the 2000s and 2010s, there was a real shift into knowing so much more of the author. And the accessibility to authors became so much more ubiquitous. Like I was a big John Green fan, and I did like watch his YouTube videos and was like a big fan of his YouTube channel as well as his books. So yeah, that distance from the author just closed rapidly, I feel
Oh,
like.
it so does. People DM me every day, like randos. Like I
Yeah.
love hearing from readers, but it's also kind of weird that people can be in the middle of reading your book and they pop up on your phone.
Yeah,
I
there's so
find
much
it
access now.
off-putting as a reader. Like if I'm scrolling, there's a particular author who's very, very who I read as a teenager and is putting out a new series now, which people can probably deduct, but is on TikTok. And every time I scroll to one of their videos, I'm kind of like, I don't want to like
Yeah.
I
engage. I don't
know.
want to
That's,
have
I'm sure
any.
that's how I'm feeling right now as you say that. I'm sure Olivia is too, like, people don't need to know me. And here I am on a
I
podcast.
Yeah, well, as a reader, I feel like I'm like, well, I can see the marketing of it. Like, I don't feel like it's a reader-author relationship. I feel it as like well, you're just marketing to me now, and I'd rather just come across
Yeah.
the book.
Yeah, and I don't
Yeah, we're
personally.
gonna clip that for the reel to play right after.
And then just put my face over it.
Yeah,
Like flashing
Amy's
up.
next to me and Olivia.
Yeah, I don't like that marketing aspect of it. And when I was a kid, I certainly never saw the authors as existing in this world. Yeah, that's right. In the same world as the books. And that's why I really loved the Lemony Snicket books because I had very
Yeah.
much clue who that was.
Yeah,
And that was
yeah.
great.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I loved those. And I loved that the author was also fictional.
Yeah. That's so cool. We got to
Yeah.
go back to that, I think.
Yeah. More
That's
of that.
that's like I can hold these up because it's YA and this says a lot about me. But this is my Warrior Cat series that I read and reread and I actually like
Oh,
put
my
to pieces
third
if I
years
take
were
them
all
out.
talking about warrior cats last week.
They're genuinely so good. Talk about darkness in like child chapter books
And
because
war.
there is maiming and murder and lovers dying and all sorts in these. But where was I going with that? Oh, the authors of these are just it's Erin Hunter is the name, but Erin Hunter is an amalgamation of different authors who all write the same series. And so you have no idea like where the author is coming from.
That's a great place to end, I think. Natural ending.
I was like, oh wow, I killed the conversation.
Yeah, yeah.
Sorry for bringing up Warrior
That's
Cats.
It's time for Olivia and I to disappear into the
Yeah,
background.
that's right.
Anyway, thanks for joining us, Olivia. That was cool. I could talk to you for hours more. So, listeners, next week we're going to have an interview with Amy Kaufman about her new YA series, Red Star Rebels, but she's written heaps of YA, like fantasy, sci-fi, and middle grade. So we're going to be talking to Amy next week. This week we've been so lucky to have the author of our book of the month, Eggshell, Olivia De Zilva. I'll hold it so you can actually see it. And so get reading. We've got 2 weeks until we do book club, and I have lots to say. I'm really loving it. I'm only halfway through, so don't spoil anything, but I'm really, really loving it. So I'm also going to hold up Plastic Budgie again. So for those of you who remember from last year, I would run out and buy a Plastic Budgie and Eggshell because actually we'll talk about this in our book club, but they're kind of cool to read side by side, actually. They kind of speak to each other in really interesting ways.
Definitely. I won't spoil, but yes, that was the intention.
I feel like in a minute we're going to keep you on for a second and get you to say your spoilers that we can tack onto the end of our book club episode or suit you in.
Okay.
So we'll say goodbye to everyone now and everyone come back for book club and you might get to hear some secrets from Olivia herself. So thanks for joining
content.
us. Secret content. See you everyone.
Bye.
Bye.